After 2 thrilling races at Silverstone, we're heading into round 6 of the 2020 season, when we thought there wasn't going to be a season, and we are now at round 6. It's absolutely crazy. And of course, that means another race week is upon us. And of course, that means another Agree or Disagree is upon us. 4 great opinions from you guys over on Twitter, Facebook, and our social medias ahead of us in this video. Before we start, we want to mention just a big thing before we start in with the statement, and that is that 58% of you guys watching this video are not subscribed to the F1 Debate Show. To use Sebastian Vettel's words, honestly, what are you doing? Or honestly, what are we doing here? If you haven't and you are new, please stick around, like and subscribe this video, and stay tuned for everything that we have coming up this year. We have reviews, previews, live reactions after the race. Obviously, this series, Agree or Disagree, and our F1 Debate shows, plus loads of more stuff for you guys this coming season. We hope that you enjoy, and we hope that you can subscribe and stick around in this channel. Now, going from a channel that's just meh to a good channel, and that is who we are joined by today, Mike from F1 Fanatics, a brilliant channel and a great guy that we've had on before. Mike, how are you doing today? Are you excited to be on our episode today?
Oh, guys, I think you're underselling yourselves. The F1 Debate Show is a great channel. And obviously, yes, we've worked together kind of plenty of times. Wearing my McLaren top today, not just to support Jordan, but obviously, you know, as your Lando Norris royalty now, and he's a big fanboy of you guys, you know, I got to make sure that I'm wearing the proper attire when I come onto the F1 Debate Show. But guys, as always, thank you so much for having me on, and looking forward to having some good opinions, agree or disagree.
Definitely, that is the best thing about this episode. The name is in the pudding, the proof's in the pudding as well. Stay tuned for all of the statements, and the biggest one, the one in the thumbnail, will be at the end, so stay tuned for that. And normally, 2 opinions are better than 1, but in this episode, 3 are better than 2. And of course, that was Mike there from F1 Fanatics, and if you haven't already, please go and check out their channel. It is a good one. So let's jump into our first statement. Jordan, what is our first one for today's episode of Agree or Disagree?
Well, the first opinion comes in from Kirill, a regular person on our channel who is obviously part of our prediction league as well, always interacting with us, a very good guy. And he's got us a very good opinion today. He says, Haas should get Perez and Hulkenberg for next season. It would be a major upgrade compared to their current lineup. There are some promising drivers in F2, but I think Haas need experience and consistency. So he's saying that the Haas team should be dropping their current drivers of Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen to replace them with Sergio Perez and Nico Hülkenberg. Of course, Nico Hülkenberg, who made a surprise return to Formula 1 in the past 2 races, of course, replacing Sergio Perez after he contracted COVID-19. And we are hoping that Sergio Perez is over it and he is recovering well, and he will be back on the grid for Spain. I'm going to say to this, agree.
Agree.
And I'm going to also say agree as well.
Well, of course, we all know that Haas have got some average drivers. They've had the same lineup since 2017, and consistency for them is key, I would say. You know, keeping a driver like Kevin Magnussen, he is quick on his day. He does have a hot head. He's got that kind of reputation. It's like a bad boy reputation, an old school racer, which I suppose is good and bad in a way. And I think K-Mag is struggling to unleash his abilities in a Formula 1 car in a Haas, a car that has been struggling for the past 2 years. We did see how good he can be in 2018 when Haas's car was pretty competitive. And he did pretty well in that season. I think he finished in the top 10 of that season, which was, I would say, a very good achievement for a team that at the time was only 2 years old, so not that bad. And Romain Grosjean, well, what does this say about Romain Grosjean? Unless you're new to the sport, you know a lot about him. I think one of the reasons why Haas kept him in the first place was because he gave some really good feedback. And a lot of people were actually surprised when, about this time last year, they retained both their drivers. Everyone was adamant Grosjean was going to be going, and in his place was going to be Nico Hülkenberg. To everyone's surprise, they retained Grosjean. And I'm like, from an F1's fan's point of view, I was like, I don't get this move at all. But it turns out that, like I said, Grosjean was kind of key in bringing Haas back into the competitive field at the end of 2019. So they wanted to keep his kind of feedback skills and to develop this car for this season. And probably down to power, that obviously we know the car isn't doing very, very good. To replace them 2 drivers with Hulkenberg and Perez is a big upgrade. Now, nothing against those two drivers I've just mentioned, Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen, but Sergio Perez, he's one of the most underrated drivers, probably the most underrated driver on the grid today. And Nico Hülkenberg is as consistent as you can get. Really, he's very, very good. He's very, very quick. Yet to get on the podium, which is a record he'll always have. It'll always be that that enigma around him that'll forever be with him till the day he sadly passes away. And I would say a driver like Hülkenberg brings a lot of experience, so he's going to have a lot of feedback. So replacing that with Grosjean, taking away Grosjean's feedback and putting in Nico Hülkenberg's would be a big upgrade. Well, maybe not an upgrade, but I would say the same kind of wavelength. But in terms of driving ability, would be a big upgrade as well. And Sergio Perez as well. I would say he's probably quicker than Hülkenberg. He did beat him when they were at Force India back in the day. And and Perez is very consistent. But I don't think Perez should go to a team like Haas in that kind of direction where they are going. I mean, we don't even know if Haas are going to be here next season or not. But that aside, I think just from that opinion alone, I think, they should be trying to go for drivers like that. And we all know Perez, the situation he's in at the moment, is he going to be there next season at Racing Point or Aston Martin next season? Because there's talks he's going to be kicked out the door for Sebastian Vettel. I think those two drivers would work well together at a team like Haas to push them forward. Then possibly bring in the F2 drivers in maybe the season after that, or even a couple of years after that. Because those two aren't exactly young anymore, are they? They're getting on a bit, so eventually they will have to change their lineup. Mike, you said agree as well. What's your reasons for this?
So, I think it's the wording in the question that I think is going there. If I was Haas, with the possibility of Perez and Hülkenberg, I'm going to defend Kevin Magnussen a little bit here. I do actually think he is quite talented, and actually in this season, I think there have been moments where he's had Hungary as well was a massive standout for Kevin Magnussen. Grosjean, I was a big defender, and I was one of the few people who could understand why Haas went for him last year, and he had such bad mechanical reliability last year. It was really difficult for Roman, but his heart just doesn't seem in it this year. So Grosjean, definitely, I think he's done with F1. I don't think he has the motivation to be developing a car near the midfield, near the back of the field at this stage of his career. With Kevin Magnussen, I would actually say, you said Sergio Perez is the most underrated. I would actually say Kevin Magnussen's the most underrated driver on the grid. I think everyone knows how good Sergio Perez is, but Magnussen's ability kind of gets blown under the radar because the only seat that he's been given a sustained time in is this Haas seat, and it hasn't necessarily been the greatest or most consistent car to show off what he can actually do on a racetrack. But with Perez and Hülkenberg, you said it yourselves, very good at Force India when they were at the time. Obviously now Racing Point, soon to become Aston Martin. Very experienced lineup. Hülkenberg with 10 years plus experience in F1. When it comes round to 2021, it'll be Perez's 10th season in Formula 1 as well, I think. It's a horrible situation if Perez does get ousted from Aston Martin. But if that's the case, if I was Haas, I'd snap them both up in a heartbeat. They do probably need a fresh input, fresh bit of impetus. They're both experienced guys, both guys who can adapt, bring lots of development knowledge to the car. They've proven that they can work well together in the past as well and be respectful of each other on the track. It would be a very strong partnership. And with Haas, obviously, there's rumours, obviously, with Gene Haas, whether he wants to commit to the long-term future of Formula 1. It would probably be a last roll of the dice with two experienced guys who are still, obviously, as we've seen with Nico Hülkenberg this weekend, and we know what Sergio Perez can do consistently, guys who will give a consistent high performance, reliability-wise. It's going to give them the best shot that if they stand a chance of sustain their future in Formula 1. So, that's why I agree, guys.
Well, yeah, good, very good statements from you two there. I say agree as well. Now, firstly, I want to kind of talk about Nico Hülkenberg. I did the news last week. We're basically talking about, has he kind of pulled at that thread? Has he opened the can of worms to enter Formula One again. Now, of course, when he retired, there was always that talk of him coming back, and there always is with drivers. You know, there was with Alonso and there was with Button and things like that. And of course, I know they're different. They've obviously won race and world championships. Nico, unfortunately, hasn't done that. And I was like, I don't think he'll come back. Obviously, he's basically done a very good deed for Racing Point, his old branded team of Force India, coming to these races, and in that, and not just being in the paddock, I think that's helped, but not just being in the paddock, but obviously his great performances. He had good qualifying on the Saturday of the British Grand Prix, obviously not his fault on the Sunday. An amazing qualifying, P3 in the 70th anniversary, and then obviously his finish in the race. It probably wouldn't have been a podium, especially with all the talent out there, but it was a great performance, especially for that Racing Point car, and a man who hasn't been in Formula One I think it's 252 days he hasn't been in Formula One, even though that isn't actually a crazy number compared to, what everyone else has waited, probably over 100 days. But I think Nico coming back into Formula One is definitely, something to think about now. There's been Racing Point and Aston Martin that he could have gone to. There's also Renault. There was talk of him going in a third place driver and sitting behind Fernando Alonso for 1 year. Alonso will probably retire after 1 year, a bit like a Kubica kind of person, help out the team for a year. And then obviously Hulkenberg will go back in alongside Ocon. And obviously now Haas has opened up again. There's also Alfa Romeo. I think there's a lot more opportunities now for Hulkenberg. It actually is quite ironic that I think he has now more opportunities to go to a team than he did in, for example, 2016, 2017, when obviously he moved to Renault. I think to have him would be good. I think that would be a good thing to have. He is a strong driver, of course. He's very knowledgeable in terms of Formula One. A bit like a kind of a Button person. I think he is there to help the team, kind of take away from the, like the more, give me wins, just me on my own. I think if he came into a team, he would be there to help the team. And if he went into Haas, I think that would be great, because they know, so for example, Gunter Steiner and Gene Haas know that they wouldn't be dealing with it, like a Grosjean or Magnussen, two drivers who are really kind of me, like a normal Formula 1 driver should be. I think Hulkenberg would be more of he would share things, and he would want the best things for himself, and he's of course chasing his podium, which he was quite close to getting, probably the closest he's ever been in his whole career. And of course he will be chasing that if he does go to Haas for 2021, but he will be there to help the team. And again, they would probably want that, especially if they were interested in signing Sergio Perez, who I'm not completely sold on that one. I believe Hulkenberg has got a good chance of going to Haas. I don't think Perez has got as good of a chance. I would still like him to stay at Aston Martin, but of course, if Sebastian Vettel is in the mix, and I don't think Lawrence Stroll could pass up on the opportunity to have the four-time world champion, and especially after he shared that trip to the petrol station. I do think that if Seb goes to Aston Martin, then yes, of course, a lot of teams will be open for Perez, and especially Haas will be. But again, this last thing as well, Grosjean and Magnussen, I don't really think they're washed up, especially Magnussen. I am more of a fan of Magnussen than I am Grosjean, and I do think that they definitely still have a year or two left in F1. They might not be moved so suddenly. I could even see things like a Magnussen-Hulkenberg partnership happening, even though they almost despise each other. I think it would be good for the team to see. But we'll have to see what happens about that. But I'm actually quite interested in that, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, what a rivalry that will be in that American team. But moving on to the second statement of the episode, and this comes in, actually, funny enough, from Nico, but not Nico Hulkenberg. Nico is pondering, and he says, the same stewards should be used at every race. Keep some consistency, something that F1 is lacking and needs fixing. Now, of course, stewards that work with the FIA, so obviously Michael Massey and his team of people that work behind the scenes in the FIA, delivering penalties and, of course, judging the races, should stay exactly the same. No guests on the panel. You always see like guest drivers and things like that. And, of course, people that work around the track, just so all the racing stays exactly the same. And a decision that's made in one race will, of course, stay the same for the next race and the remaining of the season. And to that, I say agree. Mike, what do you say?
Oh, this is a tougher one in terms of... I'm going to go agree.
I will say agree to this one as well.
I think sometimes when penalties are given out and decisions by the stewards are made, especially in terms of the race, we don't really get a fair, decision. Of course, now, everything in this world is not... unbiased. There is, of course, going to be a little bit of biased decisions in that, whether you're a footballing referee or something like that, even though you think you're going to be incredibly fair, sometimes it might not be. So for example, of course, the biggest thing that happened, no, not the biggest, but one of the biggest things in terms of penalties that came out of this race, or this race weekend even, should I say, was of course George Russell and Esteban Ocon going down the Wellington Straight in qualifying, another one that stood out for me anyways. So Esteban Ocon was on a slow lap. Again, he moved out of the way for, I think it was an Alfa Romeo that was also on the other side of the track. George Russell, who was on a flying lap, obviously came round out of Aintree onto the Wellington Straight, opened DRS, and of course had to slam on the brakes because of Ocon being there. Now again, that was one of those decisions where, yes, something would have to be done by the FIA. Now, that decision was basically quite... It seemed easy, but it seemed tough as well, because obviously you thought, where was Ocon going to go and things like that. Now, the easiest decision was to give Ocon a penalty for impeding George Russell. But we've seen other decisions taken in the past. So obviously drivers have impeded in qualifying, things that some of them have got away with it, sometimes they haven't. And of course, in the race as well, some decisions have been taken more lightly, some decisions have been taken more harshly. And again, Canada 2019, that definitely, the one comes to mind for the race. Sebastian Vettel cuts over the grass, cuts over the grass when he gets a bit of oversteer, turns in, back to the racing track, back to the racing line against that wall in Canada. Gets close to Lewis Hamilton, but of course in no way, dangerous or anything like that. But because he is a race leader, and because they need to make a decision, they need to make, they need to show that, they need to, show an example, set an example, because Sebastian Vettel, they give him a 5-second penalty, which in turn leads him to lose the race win by about a minute, I think it is, to of course Lewis Hamilton, who, even though he finishes in second, takes the victory of the Canadian Grand Prix. Of course, that was the biggest decision in terms of the FIA, where you think, that wasn't right. And again, there's been other decisions in that, like in football and things like that. Again, one of the biggest decisions I remember from sport in the last few years, it was the NFC Championship game leading up to the Super Bowl. It was New Orleans, LA Rams. They basically did not call the New Orleans Saints for pass interference on that call, stopped them from going to the Super Bowl, and obviously that was one of the biggest decisions of referees just dropping the ball. Now, of course, they thought it was the right thing to do, but everyone who was in that stadium knew that was the most stupid decision of all time. If you kept the same stewards, I think everything would be more similar. But that being said, though, is if they have one thing in mind, so for example, if somebody did impede, or if somebody did cut off the track and they wouldn't give a penalty for that, if we're not changing the stewards, that'll stay exactly the same for the next few races. It's definitely hard to see. I think when they're changing the steward, it's because of the fact of we're going to different tracks, we're going to different circuits. Of course, some drivers, some people who work with the FIA understand the track better, but it is a hard one to say. But I'm definitely going to say agree, because I think consistency, once that C word comes up in F1, that's definitely what we need. So Mike, of course, yes, keeping the same stewards. It is a hard one, as you say, so obviously, yes, what's your views on keeping the same stewards?
I'm just going to quickly reset my camera, just talking, but I'm good to go now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, why it was so hard? Because, obviously, sadly, last year, just before the start of the 2019 season, we lost Charlie Whiting, and the guy had been a mainstay in the sport, 30, 40 years, I suppose you can say, when he was even in his Brabham days, as I believe he'd worked his way up to chief engineer by the time he switched over to be on the FIA front. 2019, the stewarding decisions came under a lot of scrutiny, and it was the consistency throughout it. There was lack of consistency. There were a lot of decisions that, we were going, hang on a minute, does that make sense? You obviously brought out the Sebastian Vettel one in Canada. Obviously, then we had the incidents like Austria with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, and they took about 3 hours post-race to decide whether they were going to penalise it or not. And, the whole process was slower, less efficient, but you're always going to miss someone like a Charlie Whiting and go from there. So I think like the 2019 problems were emphasised worse. And I actually think at the 2020 season so far, they've pretty much been spot on with every decision that I can think of come to mind. Obviously people that argue either way with the Lewis Hamilton and the Alex Albon one in the Austrian Grand Prix. because obviously but essentially Hamilton's made contact, and as soon as the driver makes contact, you can't really be too upset if a driver receives a penalty there. And you know, we saw last Sunday Magnussen getting 2 days ago, Magnussen receiving a penalty for that dangerous diving on Latifi, pretty cut and draw from there. And then obviously the week before, Albon again fairly penalised for causing an avoidable incident in terms of that front. So although yes, I think if you had the same stewards at everyone, like I was agreeing, so it would lead to more consistency. So that's why I'm agreeing on that front. But is it the biggest issue? That's why I was like humming and ahhing to maybe saying disagree. I think they're getting better anyway, but yeah, like you said, rules are always open to interpretation. There's always going to be decisions that you go there. If you have the same guys doing it every single race, you at least know they're going to look at incidents in exactly the same way, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to get the same result for the same outcome. So yeah, I think it's an agreed one, but it's a bit like in the middle. That's why it's a good question, actually, in terms of agree or disagree, because you could really argue either way, but I'm going to go agree.
I think it's going to be a difficult job for any steward to get the right decision on the day, because there is a lot of pressure to deliver an answer very, very quickly, and they tend to do the safe option by going, all right, we'll review this decision at the end of the session or at the end of the race. And you kind of go, well, no, we want to answer now, because there's nothing worse than finishing a race and then going, oh, my driver's P8, oh, but he could be dropped out the points. But do I celebrate? Do I not? Like, you know, you've got that kind of, I've got to wait and find out the results after the race. So, and obviously, on top of that as well, like a steward's job, it's going to be, you are going to miss certain things as well. You know, you could review the footage time and time again. There are going to be little things that you are going to miss, and that's going to always be picked up by those eagle-eyed F1 fans who will go, hang on a minute, this was wrong, you should have given this penalty. Even if the same guy is there for the next 30 years, there's always going to be criticism over his decisions at certain races. And even then, it's not a guarantee that he's going to be as consistent, because then there might be a very similar incident, and he might go, in his view, might go, well, actually, that's quite different. In my view, that's very different to the last one, and people and us fans might go, oh, well, no, that's very similar. Such and such got a 10-second penalty, but you've just given him a 5-second penalty. How does that work? Type of thing, blah blah blah. And there's always going to be that kind of big debate about is the steward's decision right or whatever. But I think the best kind of answer to that is to keep it consistent by getting in the same people every single race. Because in big rules in F1, they don't really change that many rules every single race. So with the stewards, I do think it should be the same people at the same race if possible. And even if they do replace them for whatever reason, they should try and look back at their choices and go, right, okay, if this happens, we'll give him this penalty and so forth. Some of them are going to be more difficult than others, which is why Mike was saying it's it is a bit of a tough one. But also like I said, stewards are going to be missing some a lot of incidents as well, and again that'll just crop up some debates as well, which is good for us YouTubers as well, because it gives us something to talk about. So I think if someone is correct on that front in every single race, you might go, oh well, it's good in terms of racing, but we want something to talk about, we need something to digest after the race. But no, I would say agree, keep it consistent, keep them every single race, and maybe that could tidy up the stewards' decisions, because I would agree with that. The decisions have been better this year than what they have been last year, because let's face it, 2019 was an awful year for steward decisions. They were just, okay, you're not getting a penalty, but this guy is for the exact same incident. It just was guys, what's going on here, honestly, in the words of Sebastian Vettel, actually. But no, nothing more to say on that. Completely agree with that opinion. So the next one comes in from Kids Love F1, and he says, and again, similar to what we said before about Sergio Perez and stuff, again, he comes in this opinion with this. He says Red Bull should replace Albon with Perez if his performances don't improve by the end of the season. So what he's saying is, if Albon doesn't improve for whatever reason, and Red Bull decided to okay, you're not the driver for us, they should bring in Sergio Perez. And I'm going to kick things off with a big fat agree.
I'm definitely agreeing with this one as well.
I'm going to kick it off with a big fat disagree.
He's going for it. He went for the disagree. He went disagree like.
I was gonna say we're all so happy agreeing at the moment. Lars gone. I've had enough of this.
Lyle's,
I've had enough.
He's put a spanner in the works, but we'll get on to his opinion in a little bit. Well, we are going to be discussing about Alexander Albon in this week's F1 debate show, going in depth about whether he should be dropped or not, and that kind of thing, all that jazz. So I'm not going to go over this about that kind of thing quite a bit, but if they decide, yes, okay, Albon, you're not the driver for us, and get rid of him, who should they replace him with? Well, you would normally think that they would go with their junior category, but the two drivers in AlphaTauri, formerly Toro Rosso, were the two drivers that used to be in their cars. Daniel Kvyat for 2015 got demoted in 2016, and Pierre Gasly only did half a year in 2019. So would they look silly by going back on their decision by re-promoting one of their drivers, which, you could do, but ultimately Red Bull, they wouldn't want to do that. I couldn't see them doing that. And in terms of their junior category, they've got Daruvula, they've got Tsunoda, Yuri Vips, who they are all right drivers. I mean, Tsunoda won in Formula 2. Luckily for him, but nevertheless, a win's a win. He won at the weekend. Yuri Vips, he's tipped for big things, but they are definitely not ready for that Red Bull seat, especially with how tough it is and how demanding it's going to be driving alongside Max Verstappen. So they would really have to go off and look elsewhere. I would say the big favourite for that would be Sebastian Vettel trying to bring him back, but alongside Max Verstappen, I don't think he'll cut it. That for him will go, nah, I don't want to do this. So Sergio Perez would be an ideal fit. More than likely, he's going to be dropped by Aston Martin next season, which is going to be, I would say, an absolute disaster, because I want to see Perez in that car. He deserves to be in a competitive car, which we kind of know Aston Martin are going to be in the foreseeable future, possibly challenging for championships. We'll have to wait and see on that front. In Perez, he's never had a really good car at his disposal. Yes, we're going about 2013 McLaren, but that car wasn't good. It was just top-end midfield, at least, at best. You know what I mean? So he never got a chance to show his pace there. And when he went to Force India in 2014, that's when that car was, it could get on the podium. You could argue it was close in with the third or fourth fastest car on the grid that season. So, but it wasn't a race-winning car. Red Bull can give Sergio Perez a race-winning car, but it does come down to, how does Max perform? What are they going to do with Max? Because let's face it, Max is the future of that team. He's key to that number one drive. He's a clear number one driver. So they're always going to favour Max over their number two driver. But I think Perez could do a better job than Albon, definitely. He'll be more consistent, absolutely. And he'll be on that podium on a regular basis. Red Bull need a driver to not beat Max, but be there and challenge the Mercedes boys. Instead of having 1 against 2, have 2 against 2. And that's what they've been lacking in recent races, and even at some point last season, it was 1 against 2, and that ultimately it can work, as we've seen in for the 70th Grand Prix, but they were kind of lucky that it was quite warm that day, because if that day was a lot cooler, then I don't think Red Bull would have been as lucky. But I would say definitely Sergio Perez, as we said before, very underrated. He's a very quick guy, very good guy, and I would say he deserves that seat. Absolutely, he deserves a seat at the top team, and I think he would give good feedback. And I want to see him alongside Max Verstappen and see how he does. But I do think Max would have the edge on that front. But I think that'll be a different opinion if that move does come about. Mike, you said agree with this. Sergio Perez to Red Bull. Could you see it happening? Realistically, could you see it happening?
Realistically, based on their decisions recently, probably not, as Red Bull don't like to go out of their junior program, or at least drivers who have been in the Red Bull program. They like to keep everything in-house. But what I'm going to revert back to is Red Bull's successful time. The time where between 2009 and 2013. 2009, they almost kind of, that was their first kind of season they were competing for a championship, and just didn't manage to get it all right. But then obviously from 2010 to 2013 won 4 Constructors' Championships back to back, and they won 4 Drivers' titles back to back. In that driver lineup, they had the young, prodigal talent in Sebastian Vettel, the guy who'd come up through their programme and they were excited for, and this was their kind of golden boy, a bit like Max Verstappen is today. Alongside him, they had the experience of a Mark Webber, and, you know, not part of the Red Bull Academy, but a very experienced driver within Formula One, could compete for podiums, could compete for race wins. Silverstone obviously being key back in 2010, not bad for a number 2 driver, point in key. But, you know, that's the type of situation. They went out the programme, that was successful. Just because they have an academy doesn't mean everyone goes. And if they don't have drivers that are needing at the level that they do to compete against Mercedes, which, you know, Mercedes have just become this juggernaut of machine. You know, one of the discussions we had, I think, when you guys came over on the channel, are Mercedes the best team in the history of F1? I think, you know, they pretty much are. So if you're going to beat the best team in the history of F1, you've got to be firing on all guns. And, you know, if Albon doesn't kind of provide that number 2 slot, I agree. I don't think Gasly yet has proven enough to kind of go back into that Red Bull seat, and I just think the Kvyat-Red Bull relationship is a car crash waiting to happen. Too much kind of hurt, I think, on both sides of the fence on that one. Perez, he'd be a free agent, he'd be an experienced guy, proven that he can get podiums in tricky situations, incredibly consistent performer. You know, he would be that guy who would push Max but wouldn't beat Max over the course of a season. But Red Bull don't need that. Red Bull need a guy, say for this weekend, for example, you know, say things were closer, and they need a guy running in 4th or maybe even splitting the Mercedes on some occasions to help Max out, to kind of push the Mercedes car to where it's not comfortable, force Mercedes not to have a situation like in Hungary last year in 2019. If Max had a teammate who was running P3 at the time, not allowing Lewis Hamilton to have that free pit stop to chase him down on the medium compound, Max Verstappen would have won that Hungary race, and that's what they need from a teammate. And if Albon doesn't produce that, Perez, with that experience, although outside the academy, I think would be a great candidate to fill that role, what they need from their second driver in that Red Bull car.
Well, yeah, so firstly, obviously I'm the only one to say disagree. Firstly, Albon's been in this Red Bull car for about 15 races now, and he's been in Formula 1 for about 25, 26 races. Firstly, I don't think that he at all is not performing well in that car. Of course, no secret that he's not compared to Max Verstappen, but you can't do that. You can't say Bottas is going to be as good as Hamilton, especially when he was in 2017. This is really the second part of the season for Alexander Albon. And when we get to Belgium, maybe a bit later now, because of course the season has been shortened, maybe when we get to the Nürburgring or Portugal this year, then kind of Albon can say, right, I've had a full season in F1. Sorry, I've had a full season with Red Bull Racing, and then, you know, now this is me moving on. We're still in his rookie career, his rookie season, sorry. So I don't think that he's not performing, and I really don't. And I still also do not think that Red Bull, you know, changing their drivers is a good idea. Although I did have a little bit of an inkling that just came in mind when I was watching the race on Sunday. Actually, it was on Saturday, but it was kind of relayed on the Sunday, especially before the race. That, and again, I probably wouldn't have liked it in terms of the Red Bull move, but obviously one of my favourite drivers on the grid right now, and obviously I absolutely loved him when he was at Red Bull, and I thought he should have been given a chance, and I was pretty hurt that my team didn't give him the chance, Pierre Gasly, is that Gasly would then replace Albon. It would be a changing places, you know, back again, like we've ran around the world, and, you know, we've you know, there's no point in doing this. You know, Albon's come forward, Albon's gone back, Gasly's gone forward, Gasly's gone back, Gasly's gone forward again. There's no point in doing this. But I actually did think that Gasly was going to be put back in that car. Firstly, again, just going back to Albon, I do think that he will get the results eventually. He has had a bit of a hard time. I think the first qualifying session he was P13. You know, sometimes he isn't getting the best out of the car. He is a younger driver, both in his age and experience, especially compared to Max. I think also that you remember you can't compare this to Max. I know we're going to keep saying that. I know it's Formula 1. We can't say that forever. But again, as I say, you know, Albon is still in his first season with the team in that way. I do think he's a strong driver, and of course he will get that podium. He was incredibly close on 2 occasions in Brazil last year, and of course in Austria. He will get that, and I think they need to stick with him, definitely. To see at the end of the season that Albon might be replaced, I would be up for that, and I would say yes, most likely he would be. But in this way, though, if he was replaced, because of course he's just on a 1-year contract until the end of this year. If he was replaced, it wouldn't be a replacement in this way. It wouldn't be a trade in place. It would just be a normal driver getting signed, a normal driver going back. And again, if he, let's say, obviously AlphaTauri now are a brand new team, if he was to leave Red Bull and then be signed by AlphaTauri, in this way, it wouldn't really be like a demotion like it was for Fiat or Gasly. In that way, and again, obviously, me being, I do think Gasly is strong enough now to go to that Red Bull. The man who basically I think has even been performing better with AlphaTauri than he did with Red Bull. But they need to give Albon the chance. I think this is, over this statement. I think now it's like I don't even want to listen to it. I just want to stay with Albon. I think he's strong enough in that car, and I think that this should be the partnership at least till the end of the year. And again, I don't know why I'm so scared that Albon might be dropped before the end of the 2020 season, because it has happened on 2 occasions, but still big occasions in this way. As I say, 2021, if Gasly's signed, I would like that. That would be good to see. But again, if this does happen, it won't be, I don't think, because of their program anymore. It would just be because of we're giving Gasly another chance. Okay, fair enough, but over anything, he is a good driver. And to kind of break into the statement a little bit, I want to go back to what Mike said. Yeah, and I completely agree. I think Red Bull now are past the days of sticking with just their program and just AlphaTauri. And again, like Jordan said there, they haven't got any younger drivers. I think that they would be looking further afield. And again, just going to Perez, I don't see it happening, but the only thing I could see happening is, of course, Racing Point this year, Aston Martin next year. There would still be a bit of a partnership, say, and of course with Aston Martin leaving Red Bull, they won't be a part of that, of course, but Red Bull have worked with Aston Martin in the past. So maybe behind the scenes there would just be a little bit of a partnership in that way. And again, it would be good for Perez to see Red Bull, and again, he does deserve a top team drive. But again, I don't agree with this statement, and I do think that Albon is good enough to stay at least till the end of the year. And to be replaced by Perez at the end of the year, I don't know. I'd like to see Perez at Racing Point. I've said this to the first statement, I'll say it to the second, and I do believe that for the future. Anyways, moving on to the final statement from me, and this is the title of the thumbnail also, and it is from Abhay Pandya. Again, sorry if I've spelled your name wrong. And they say, is Ferrari letting Seb down, or is it Seb's fault? And they've even said, you can just talk about this on agree or disagree. So, of course, we definitely have. And I think this is also the one that Mike flagged up to us. Obviously, good eyes from you. And yeah, so obviously Sebastian Vettel, Spinny McGee. Oh man, you've got to feel a little bit bad for him, haven't you?
Yeah.
So are they letting him down, or is it Seb's fault? I mean, you can be on the fence. Firstly, I'm just saying you can be on the fence, because I could be on the fence here. I'm gonna be. I'm not going to be 100% on anything. It might be like a 60-40, 70-30, but my main one is I'm going to say agree. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah. This is obviously I flagged it up, and it's a killer one, because I believe it's half a dozen of one and 6 of the other type of situation with this. It really is a difficult one to say agree or disagree either way. I'm going to go with disagree.
I will say on this one, now this is a tough one, because I think, in my opinion, it's both.
Yeah.
So, I will say disagree.
Well, at least we're kind of, on the board in this way, that we don't think it's just one side. We can see both sides of it. So I say agree. I mean, firstly, Sebastian Vettel, obviously fighting world champion Red Bull, definitely has a place in my heart. I think when I was watching the race, obviously we already know this, but again, things kind of crop up when you realise, something massive in Formula 1 where you already knew beforehand, and you just think wow. And again, I was watching the race on Sunday, and I saw obviously the little kind of thing came up at the bottom, obviously about Michael Schumacher's wins and Lewis Hamilton's wins. Michael Schumacher 91, Lewis Hamilton 87, hopefully 88 in that race. Obviously now still 87. We're going for that record. And then again, third place is Sebastian Vettel at 51. And I remember when he broke, I think it was Ayrton Senna or Alain Prost's record, obviously when the win record, he became second at that point, obviously before Lewis overtook him, all the way back in 2013. And it was just absolutely incredible. We were witnessing something insanely special by this guy. Of course, going to Ferrari, he hasn't really found the mission. Hasn't been, he hasn't been win now. It's been, second, third, fourth, occasionally creep up a bit. It hasn't been good for him. Mission, not good. Mission, we do have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. Mission's not going well. All those mission things. And so this year, of course, Ferrari's been incredibly hard to drive. Charles Leclerc, we all know this. Charles Leclerc got 4th place on Sunday, started 8th, finished 4th. And on the radio, it was almost the same. So he wins in Monza last year. Was absolutely ecstatic on the radio. He finishes in 4th place at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. Goes absolutely ecstatic. First, in front of the Tifosi, 4th, off the podium. Why is he going ecstatic? Well, do you know what it is? Because he probably knows. I mean, yes, of course, there's a little bit of humour in that as well, like kind of, sarcasm. But he knows that that car is not good. It's terrible. To use a phrase of Rush, it's a piece of, like a dog. But if you drive it, what's he say? If you drive it, you make my life good. Oh, I love that scene. Charles Leclerc knows that car's bad. And before Sebastian spins, which, I mean, it could have, remember the car could still be at fault there. He did go onto the uneven part of the curb, obviously kind of close to cutting the corner. Of course, he did also try to avoid signs. But remember, that car could have easily spun him around. It happened when he was going up the Lauda curve many times in Austria, and even Charles Leclerc spinning in Styria. Remember, he spun into Sebastian Vettel. So, remember that car's still not out of the woods. It's not completely Sebastian Vettel's fault on that one. But again, we just see in qualifying, Sebastian Vettel almost gets eliminated in Q2. He just makes it through into Q3. He's always at risk. It's ridiculous. And, yes, Sebastian's been having his problems. And yes, his heart might not be in Formula 1 anymore. I'm almost sold on that. I think maybe some of you guys are as well. If you do think, what do you think about, obviously leave it in the comment section, what do you think about Sebastian Vettel? Is he done now? Again, remember, nothing takes away from his achievements. 4 World Championships, definitely. But I'm saying the now is Sebastian Vettel might not be in Formula 1 anymore. The love might not be there and the passion. And again, if he's driving a car which is a piece of S, then he might not want to stick around and see that for very, very long. I do think that the car this year is Sebastian. The car is at fault, and Sebastian is not at fault. Charles is struggling as well. But again, that's why I'm not 100% agree. The disagree is because it is a Ferrari, and Charles did get on the podium at the British Grand Prix. He did get 4th place at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. Charles gets a result, and to be honest, Charles in his 2nd season at Ferrari already beat Sebastian last year in terms of pole positions and wins. I think it was 3 wins for Charles, 1 win for Seb, and then 7 pole positions for Charles Leclerc. Even getting pole position in Singapore, the race, of course, he swapped over, and it was kind of like here we go, Sebastian, you come through, there we go, there's my good deed for the year. So again, Charles in his 2nd season is again kind of beating and almost borderline humiliating the 4-time world champion. I think it's a bit of both. But for this year, and the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to take it off Sebastian's shoulders a little bit, because I think he does, obviously he still has that talent, and a bit of him wants to stay in F1.
Yes, so I did say disagree. So I think we're all going to pretty much start off the same way by going, it's both. It's not entirely Ferrari's fault, and it's not entirely Seb's fault as well. It's very close. It's probably something like 55-45% if you were going there. Where I do go disagree, because obviously this is like, have Ferrari let Sebastian down.
Obviously in Silverstone, and said, you put me on the wrong strategy.
Yeah,
that's why I'm
maybe
so bad.
in terms of if this was 2017, 2018, you could maybe argue a little bit more.
Come back in Spain, drive flawlessly.
But there's driver errors in there.
You need to do a
And
flawless race on your side.
clearly,
and show
it's
everyone
got to 2020.
You're still the full-time world champion. Because remember,
They had
we
the
know that, but a lot
2019
of people
season,
a lot of
and
people
they
out there,
decided
especially the
they
younger
don't
generation,
want to
might not
offer
even know that.
Sebastian Vettel
So
a new
that's
contract.
my agree.
Now think of that what you will, in terms of there'll be arguments either side for the real reasons
four world championships,
behind that.
Emily is slime.
But
I don't know
as
about
a
you,
driver's
but I'm like,
ability,
I remember
as a
it, you remember it, Jordan
four-time
remembers it,
world
but I
champion,
think most people
clearly
probably
in that
forget
time
it.
at the
You
team,
definitely will do.
he's
After
either
you
not
see that
impressed them
Sebastian
enough
Stan,
that they
the only
fully
driver to do
believe
that
in
out of
Sebastian
20,
Vettel is the
including
guy to
Nicholas
take them
Latifi,
forward,
and he's a
or
four-time world champion.
you know they just think
what?
Charles Leclerc is
But
better,
yes,
or
obviously that was
going
my
to be
view.
better within
Mike,
the
you
next
said agree,
couple of
disagree.
seasons,
So, what
and
was your view
so
on
that
Ferrari?
blame has to sit on Sebastian Vettel's door because
Right.
you know there is no one doubt he is. You can't ever take a bow. He's one of the greatest drivers to drive within the sport. You know, he's a four-time world champion. Not many people have done that in terms of, I think it's only Lewis, Fangio and Schumacher who have won more than him, and it's the same amount as Alain Prost. So, you know, that is a great bracket of drivers to be a part of, and you're never going to be able to take it about. But we're not talking about Sebastian Vettel in 2009 to 2013. We're talking about Sebastian Vettel now in 2020, and the driver errors that they can't solely be part of the team. You know that is down to you. It's the most recent one, like you were talking about, spinning at Abbey, just taking too much curb and getting on the throttle too quickly and just kind of losing the rears and spinning out. It's a guy that just doesn't have confidence in his team. So that's where Ferrari go. The 2020 season, there's clearer kind of relationship go. But I think the 2019 was the real end of things. He didn't have a bad season as what I think a lot of people made out that he had. I think he actually still had some very good things, and if he won in Canada, we may have seen a different Sebastian Vettel. I mean, technically he crossed the line first, but without the penalty, if he won in Canada, we might have seen a different Sebastian Vettel through that season. But Charles Leclerc beat him in the championship. There were some reliability issues in the second half of the season. There were clear team orders that there was this switch in the team of favouring Charles Leclerc over Sebastian Vettel, and that was because of Charles Leclerc's performances, especially on the Saturday, that had made Ferrari go, this is the guy that we want to put our chips behind other than Sebastian Vettel. So although it's a little bit of both, you have to look at the performances of Sebastian Vettel, whether you think that's solely down to Ferrari, which I know some people do, or whether you think it's solely down to Sebastian's ability. It is somewhere in between in terms of a crisis of confidence with Seb. But yeah, I don't think they've entirely let him down. I think it also, the blame sits on Sebi's shoulders, and he hasn't done enough to make the great team like Ferrari want him to be their future, because he's not old. He's still young enough. This is the age that that Lewis Hamilton was still going on and winning championships with Ferrari. So that's with Mercedes. That's not the issue here. It's clearly they just don't believe he can do it, and that would probably be my biggest worry looking at the Vettel situation, that a team doesn't believe he's the guy.
It is upsetting to see where Sebastian Vettel is at this present time. He just looks, even in interviews, you can just tell how his body language and how he words things, and he doesn't want to be there now. He just wants this season to end and look forward elsewhere. Whether he's still going to be in Formula One or not, it's still going to be a mystery. More than likely, he's going to be going to Aston Martin, but things can quickly change in Formula One, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. And I think Vettel isn't the driver he once was, and even if he has a top car, even if he was in a Mercedes, I still don't think he would be the guy he was at Red Bull. However, I do think he would be performing a slightly bit better than what he is in the Ferrari. Now, we know that this Ferrari car is bad. It's awful. It really, really is. And actually, Lyle quoted something from Rush. I'm going to quote something from Rush here. It's it's amazing. All these facilities, and they make a piece of crap like this. That it's so true. All these, the amount of money that Ferrari have got, and all these facilities that they've got back at Maranello, and they build this. What the hell? Like, I mean, I'm baffled. But saying that, you go to us. Charles Leclerc's got a couple of podiums. Charles Leclerc he's not struggling. Vettel is. That is down to Sebastian Vettel. Lacking confidence. Maybe Ferrari are favouring the car by Charles Leclerc because Sebastian Vettel has not lost that much ability and that much speed in such short space of time. No way in the world he has. So whether that is Vettel just maybe himself, he's just going, I can't be bothered, what's the point? You know, that we've just completely fallen out. But I don't think Vettel would be like that. I think Vettel would go, for himself, let's prove to the other teams and maybe to everybody else, even to himself, like, I am still the driver, I am still a good driver. Because I think deep down, if you dig far enough, you might kill him, but that's not the point. If you dig far enough, you will find that that fire still burning in Formula 1, which is why I want to see Vettel in a competitive car, or somewhere else. Maybe in the midfield or somewhere else, maybe like Aston Martin would be a good one, just to prove to people, or maybe even to show to people that it was Ferrari all along, and I just fell out of love with them, and we just didn't see eye to eye anymore. And look what I can do. I can be consistent. I can be competitive now. I can get the results when needed to. And I think that would open up a lot of other people's eyes to go, yeah, Vettel is the driver he was. But then you also go, well, Ferrari have built this car, but they did build a really good car in 17 and 18. Better than the Mercedes car, you could say, in some degree. And Vettel wasn't able to get the title for either constructors nor championship. And then you go, why? Why didn't you do this? If you were the driver you still were, if you were the Sebastian Vettel guy, you should have won a championship in that car. And I'm like, that is again mainly down to Sebastian Vettel, but it's also down to Ferrari because strategy calls, unreliability at times. Like Ferrari would start the season strong and then dip form about after probably Belgium, maybe perhaps around that time, Belgium, Italy, around that period of time, then Vettel and Ferrari would be off the pace, and you're going, how? Why? What's going on? Like, why such a drop in form? And that's why Mercedes are the team that they are, because they're just there. They haven't dipped, they haven't got worse, they haven't got better, they're just there. Level playing field. Ferrari, like a sea on a stormy day. It just waves all over the place, up and down, whatever you like. It's mental. It's just a mess. I want to say it is 100% both parties' fault. Ferrari build a bad car, wrong strategy calls, and Vettel just being Vettel at this present time. And it is frustrating to see when people go, "Oh, Vettel's not a good driver." Vettel is a good driver. It's just, for whatever reason, he's just not clicking with this car. He's just not clicking with himself, and he's become a meme. And that's bad. That's not good. If you told me where we would be with Sebastian Vettel at the end of 2013, I would not have believed you. I didn't like Vettel back in the day because he was winning. So you'd think 2013 me would be absolutely loving what I'm saying right now. Oh wow, Vettel not winning all the time, brilliant. But it's sad because Vettel, he's a nice guy, he's a good driver. I want him to do well. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see about that. But it's been a good agree or disagree, I must say. Again, 4 really good opinions. Mike, have you enjoyed yourself on your agree or disagree debut? It's been good.
Oh yeah, loved it, guys. This was good. There were some great questions put in there as well, and I think they're good ones when you're like going, I can't make my mind up whether it's agree or disagree, and I think that's good because it then leads to a good discussion. But yeah, so some very interesting ones definitely on that. But guys, as always, thank you so much for having me on the channel. And guys, we gotta get these guys to 3,000 subscribers. That's the next milestone, isn't it, for you guys? So yeah, we'd definitely thank you guys as always. It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Mike. Again, pleasure having you on the channel as well. We get to 3, but you get to 2,000 as well. Obviously, great progress you've been making. Just over a year old these guys are, and over 1,000. It's absolutely incredible, but they definitely deserve some amazing content. So coming up on our race weekend, heading into Spain, we have F1 24/7 news tomorrow, and then our preview show on Thursday, our F1 debate show on Saturday, and then our live race reaction done by John yet again after the Spanish Grand Prix on Sunday. It's going to be incredible. And again, like we said at the start, if you are new around here, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell and stay with us throughout the rest of the 2020 season. Likewise, go and do that with F1 Fanatics. Also, Mike, what is coming up on your channel? Can you give us a few of your new videos coming up?
With that, I'll grab your notepad.
Quick, get it out here. Well, obviously, after you've just watched this and you wanted to relive the kind of 70th anniversary Grand Prix, we have our race review podcast where we look things there out at the same time as this one. Obviously, Wednesdays we have our F1 Fantasy Weekly that comes out, which is kind of the channel that looks at the fantasy game in a bit of detail and kind of gives some recommendations there and keeps you up to date with who's scoring what points in that, so you can make sure you stick on top with your fantasy teams. And then obviously it's looking ahead to the Spanish Grand Prix with all the kind of previews and live streams with quali live reactions and race reactions and all that good stuff as well. Don't know about you guys, absolutely loving having these back-to-back races. It's the third in our second triple header of the season. It's been brilliant.
I'm loving it.
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. Loving it. As I said at the start there, round 6. You know, 2020 was not going to happen. A few months ago it wasn't happening. And then Austria happened, and then all of a sudden we're all the way and heading into round 6 in Spain. It's going to be absolutely incredible. Our prediction league opens soon. Obviously, let us know your top 3 heading into our preview as well. And who says weeks are boring when you've got our and Mike's content on F1 Fanatics? Obviously, hope you enjoy all the stuff heading your way. Heading into the Spanish Grand Prix. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this episode. Again, leave all of your comments down in the comment section below. Do you agree, disagree with all 4 statements that we have said? Of course, Seb 1 being the biggest in the thumbnail, but if you have stuck around to hear that, then of course you've heard all the other 3, so let us know what you think about that. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time guys, stay safe, and we'll see you later.
See you later, guys.